Hi there, I'm Courtney Edens with University of Denver's MBA program with a concentration in marketing. The name of the session that I attended today was a featured session with Chelsea Handler and Jen Psaki from MSNBC. The title I would give the session is a direct quote from Chelsea Handler, which is "Be indefatigable." I had to look this word up. Um, Specifically, this word means persisting tirelessly. And that word really struck me in the context of this specific session in which two very public and very impressive women discussed women's rights. We live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, and people everywhere are learning to adapt and find their footing, especially women, faced by so much adversity right now. But I think the key takeaway from this conversation was stick to your core values and be indefatigable. Um, so, some specifics around the session today. Starting with women's rights, of course, we're here in Texas. There's been some legislation in the past year or so coming off of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So, hot topic here in Texas today around women's rights and bans off of our bodies. Um, we talked a bit about the shame game with women. This is something that women do to other women, but are doing less so. But, the judgments around having a baby versus not having a baby. But if you have the baby, how are you feeding your baby? Is it with formula? Is it with breast milk? And of course, all told through the lens of Chelsea Handler's humor, which helps us to process these kind of ridiculous, topical conversations with humor. And then the conversation, kind of led into using humor to initiate conversations and build connections with people and empathize with others. Also talked a bit about meditation and really getting centered because, as Chelsea very eloquently put it, making a goal for yourself every day that after every interaction you have with another human being, you have given positive energy. You haven't taken it. And that was a really valuable nugget to walk away from this conversation with. Um, she also mentioned this idea of the zero sum game, which I've heard a lot today. It's just a trend in some of these conversations, both along the lines of business and social justice and life and business and marketing, and your passions don't have to be a zero sum game. There is so much so much sunlight to go around and be spread, and you don't have to dim others' light, right? So Chelsea used the example of her show that was on E back in the early aughts, Chelsea Lately. It was a lot of comics sitting around a round table, and it was one of the first times that comics were sharing the stage. They were sharing the spotlight, and that was very intentional for her to build that show. That's what she wanted. There wasn't a winner takes all. It was, okay, here's the topic. Let's all just very quickly rap about this topic and let's share the spotlight, and all of our contributions are valued equally. I used to watch that show, never considered that in consuming it, but I think it's ahead of its time in a way. Um, yeah, and really where the conversation kind of landed and how we wrapped it all up was around values. And um, Jen Psaki was asking Chelsea, how come you've become so politically driven in your comedy and just generally your social presence online and the content of your Netflix specials? Like, how has it become so politically driven? And with humor, Chelsea shared that with having such a presence and sway and influence after 2016 and what happened in that election and everything that has followed, her values have driven the trajectory of her career beyond just making fun of celebrities on, a talk show and into really getting at the root of some of our biggest problems that face people today in this country. Um, but of course, with a smile at the end, she said, let's not take ourselves so seriously. Like, comedy is the great elixir. Like, that is what makes this whole thing more bearable, which I think is just a really great reminder for everybody, whether you're sitting in an office every day, sitting in a classroom, or, you know, standing up on stage. So, I mean, I knew going into this session it would not necessarily be a conversation around marketing or tech. It certainly was a conversation about culture. But it was important for me to attend this one as a woman living in the aftermath of Roe v. Wade being overturned and the increased scrutiny or control over individual liberties in this country. So, no major revelations as it pertains to marketing. However, I think one takeaway is, what are the problems being faced by some of, if you're managing a brand or you're managing a store or, what have you, you're servicing an audience with a certain product or whatever it is. What are some of the problems that your customer base is facing? And do your core values as a brand or a company or what have you align with your services, and can you help solve any problems? Something to consider. I think later this weekend we'll learn a bit more about how brands engage in social justice. So curious to learn more about that. But as I leave that session today, that is definitely one of the key takeaways is, how your brand and its core values can align with the core values of some of your audience. And in doing so, can you help solve problems? Thanks for listening.